Finding random frames in Interstellar until it's ugly. You know, the first time I watched this movie, I didn't really like it because I thought the love transcends space and time thing was a little cheesy, but I rewatched it recently, and I think it's a great movie. 1, 2, 3. Okay, that's cool. The first thing that I noticed about this film when watching it for the second time on my TV at home was that the aspect ratio, which right here is 2.40 to 1, is actually different than the first time that I saw it, because Christopher Nolan will shoot a lot of his films in IMAX, and when you shoot in 70mm or 65mm IMAX, you are going to get a much more tall, boxy kind of aspect ratio of 1.43 to 1. And you will see that in the theater. You will see the aspect ratio change from a widescreen to a more boxy aspect ratio for certain scenes, because here's the thing, Christopher Nolan doesn't shoot all of his films in IMAX. He only shoots certain portions of his film in IMAX. For this specific movie, only about a third of the movie was actually shot in IMAX, so you might be watching a dialogue scene of a more widescreen aspect ratio, and then all of a sudden you cut to a more epic, sprawling scene that the director wants to give a sense of awe for, and you will all of a sudden see all of the image up here, and it'll just be a full screen image. But in this cut of the film, I think that this is just the only aspect ratio you get. I got this off Paramount Plus, which I found very interesting. I don't know why they would do that. I want to see the original intention of the filmmaker. I don't want to see just a consistent frame, if that's not what the filmmaker intended. It's still not an ugly shot. Here we go. Let's go towards the beginning. 1, 2, 3. Cool shot of a house. First of all, note that this house was actually built from scratch, and it was built in a very specific way so that the sun would rise on the front side of the house and set on the back side of the house. So we can tell right here that this is in the morning because the sun is only hitting the front side of the house. And it is also a very overcast, cloudy day, which gives a very soft golden hour kind of light. There's also a lot of color correction going on here as well. This sky is very blue for being so overcast. I'm not sure if I love that, honestly, but I mean, it does make the image pop and gives it more of that teal and orange color palette. But other than that, I do love the framing of the shot. You have a lot of depth. You are looking down the road and seeing the vanishing point in the distance, and the depth is primarily being accomplished with just these power poles right here, just leading your eye down that way. And then you also have a nice contrasting green foreground. Not an ugly shot. Let's see if we can get inside the house. 1, 2, 3. Yes, perfect. First of all, I do love the composition of this shot. I love where the camera is placed. You are just looking into the corner of this room, which provides depth, but it also is shooting into the light, which is coming from these windows, which provides an opportunity for upstage lighting. Usually in these situations, you want the light to come from behind the actors, and if you're shooting into the windows like this, that is what is happening. As far as how they lit it, I believe they primarily relied on 18K HMI lights, just blasting through 12 by 12 silks of diffusion outside of the window, and that's partly what contributes to the overexposure of the window, that and the sun. And you can like that or not like that. I don't really know what I prefer as far as overexposed windows, because you can imagine a situation, another world in which you could see outside of this window and you could see more greens and blues maybe, and it would provide more depth and it would provide more color contrast, but you know, I don't mind it in this situation. But one thing I did find interesting about the way they lit this is that I believe for a lot of these shots, they actually had gels in front of the HMIs, specifically quarter green gels, just to give it a little hint of green. And they did this to mimic the light of the sun bouncing off of the corn outside, I guess. But I thought that was interesting. Keep that in mind. Tip for your next shoot. The other thing I learned about the way they lit in situations like this is that they would actually wrap the light coming from these windows around the actors a little bit. So you can see right here, especially on Timothée Chalamet's face, he has a little bit of light coming from the front direction, not just directly behind him. That could be because there are windows over here, but it also is probably due to the fact that they used a 2K soft light to just help fill in the rest of the image. Not an ugly shot. Let's stay towards the beginning. 1, 2, 3. Okay, I think this is in the daughter's room. This is a really cool shot. As far as how they lit this, it's probably the same as the previous example. There's a window over here that they are probably blasting an 18K HMI through a silk right outside of, and then they are probably also doing the same back here. And this honestly creates a single source light setup that is kind of harsh. It has a lot of harsh fall off. It goes from bright to dark pretty quickly, but there's also a little bit of fill light. I don't know if that is just bouncing off of the wall next to him, or they probably have some kind of a bounce board or maybe even light on this side of his face, just filling it in a little bit. It's honestly kind of simple lighting. It's just expensive lighting. It's expensive to rent an 18K or 2 HMI lights. My point is just take that as like an encouragement for you if you are a DP, that you can make images like this if you have enough money. It's not rocket science. The only other thing I'll say about this shot is that this was probably one of the images that they used a diopter for, because this image was shot on anamorphic lenses, and anamorphic lenses are notorious for having very poor close focus distance, which means that you can't really get an image in focus if you are too close to it. But you can solve that by using diopters, which are elements you put in front of the lens that help you to be able to focus on closer objects. So not ugly. Let's go towards the end. 1, 2, 3. Oh, that's cool. So I find this image actually pretty ironic, because this is the space station, which is floating thousands of miles above this planet back here, but this is a very flat shot. Even though we are technically supposed to be seeing thousands of miles of depth, the shot is actually pretty flat because you don't have any of the indicators of depth, like foreground or depth of field. You have a very just flat image. Now, let me be clear, that doesn't mean it's bad. Flat images are often very beautiful. Just look at a Wes Anderson film. But I just find it kind of ironic that we are technically supposed to be seeing thousands of miles, but it's actually kind of a flat image. This is really cool because this is an example of a miniature. They used a lot of miniatures on this set because Christopher Nolan loves to do practical things, and quite honestly, I think miniatures look better than CGI in almost every situation, unless you just make a really crappy looking miniature. But I love that they did this, and I want to see more of that in films going forward. So not ugly. 1, 2, 3. Okay, I love this scene. So they shot the scene in Iceland where they found this very shallow but kind of big pool of water. I think there's probably some CGI going on back here, some set extension, because as you can see by the BTS photos, it doesn't quite look like this, so I'm sure there's some trickery going on here, but nevertheless, great set, great location. Part of the reason it's a great location is because Iceland has very gray skies a lot of the time, and that provides a very soft light coming from overhead. They're also probably augmenting the light here because I feel like you wouldn't really be getting much light on her face with this helmet on. I think there's probably another 18K HMI light off to the side through a silk, just providing a ton of light on her face right there. So not an ugly shot. 1, 2, 3. Timmy. So he's outside on what looks like a pretty overcast day again, and they're probably just lighting in the same way that I mentioned earlier, with 1 or 2 18K HMIs shooting through a silk. That was their go-to way of lighting in this movie, whether it be outside or inside, it seems. The other thing they did in situations like this was they used an ultra bounce, which is just a big piece of fabric that is very reflective, especially outside in the sun. The sun hits the ultra bounce and then it reflects back in kind of a softer light on his face. So maybe they did that. If I zoom into his eyes here, let's see what happens. It's hard to really tell what's going on. There is a bit of a reflection in his eye right here, which could be the ultra bounce. The ultra bounce could be kind of positioned down here a little bit, but I don't know. Nevertheless, not an ugly shot. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Gorgeous. So I'm not sure, but if this was one of the scenes that I researched beforehand, the way that they lit this would be by putting a lot of fluorescent tubes in the ceiling just to provide this ambient light you see back here. And then the way they lit her would be with a Kinoflow off screen. Okay, let's go back towards the end. 1, 2, 3. I mean, this is interesting, and I might get flack for this because I remember in my previous video on Barbie, I had kind of a similar image where I'm pretty sure this isn't the entire image, but there's like a passing light that overexposes the character for a few seconds, and I criticized Barbie for that. I didn't criticize Barbie for that. I just said that the frame was ugly. I don't find this one quite as ugly. I just think there's a lot more going on in this image that makes it a more interesting image and not one that I can deem ugly. I love the bokeh in the background and how colorful that is. It's everywhere. The shallow depth of field makes a great image. The shadow on his face is not bad right here. And the shadow on the face in Barbie was one of the reasons that I didn't love that image. As far as how they lit this, I think they used 20K mole Fresnel lights outside of the window just to replicate them passing by the sun and creating this overexposed look. Not an ugly shot. Let's go towards the end. 1, 2, 3. What? He is so happy. I guess this is in the bookshelf black hole set, which one thing you should know about that is that it was actually partly a practical set. Here's some BTS photos of this, and as you can see, they used projectors to give a practical, like, wiggling light effect that you can see on the bookshelf walls here, I guess. But then they extended this set with CGI in post, and that's one thing that a lot of films do nowadays, and I think it's pretty ingenious. You won't often see actors just in front of a green screen because that provides not much depth and it just looks fake a lot of the times. What you will see is partly practical sets being filled in by CGI later in the process. And that having a physical, tangible part of the set and not just being in front of a green screen gives more of a sense of realism, and it gives the actors something to actually interact with. And I think that's a very important part of making so just suspending the disbelief of the audience and making a film look real. So not ugly. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Okay, it's basically the same shot. Not really, but kind of. She's in the spaceship here, though, not inside of the bookshelf place. And I think the way that they lit a lot of these scenes inside of the spaceship was just by using small LED lights embedded into the set. And one thing also that I found cool is that the sets were built very realistically. These spaceship sets were built very kind of claustrophobically. A lot of times on movies, you will see sets being built where you can remove the walls so that you have more room for the camera operator to work with. They can back up a little bit past the wall if they need to get the right shot. But Christopher Nolan wanted this to feel real and not feel like there were movable walls. He wanted it to feel claustrophobic because that's how these characters would feel in space. And so that's just a cool aspect that I discovered when researching this movie. But I don't know. Yeah, I guess you're seeing kind of part of the way they lit it right here in this reflection. That just looks like an LED tube to me that might be lighting her face and giving her an highlight right here. She has a little bit of orange on her face right here. I guess you can also see the reflection of that right here. I don't know if that's supposed to be coming from outside, like motivated by the sun or not. Not ugly. Let's go back towards the beginning. 1, 2, 3. Okay. To me, it looks like they're just lighting straight with the sun in this one, because this is not soft light at all. It's a very harsh, very well-defined shape. That's not a bad thing because they are positioning her in the correct position for the sun to make a beautiful image, primarily because they are positioning her in a way where there is fall off on her face, there is contrast on her face, and it creates depth, and it just makes a more interesting shot. And they are also positioning her in a way where the shadows are not creating a very ugly shadow. I don't know. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, gorgeous. Love the colors here. The color of the background is contrasting with her reddish hair and skin tones. Very nice. 1, 2, 3. I mean, it's not the most interesting shot, but it's not ugly, I guess. It's fine. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, fine. I like that you can see out the window here. I think these are projections that they projected onto a screen through the windows. So I don't know if this is, it might be somewhat CGI, but I think they did use projection. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, fine. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, good. 1, 2, 3. That's cool. I love how the frost in the helmet just creates texture, and I love how the blues contrast with the background. 1, 2, 3. Great. His skin tones look a little more orange here. I don't know if that's super consistent with the rest of the movie, but still great looking shot. All of this going on, shallow depth of field. Wonderful. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, great. Lighting with the LED lights. Wonderful. 1, 2, 3. Love it. 1, 2, 3. Cool. 1, 2, 3. It's not ugly. It's nice sky. 1, 2, 3. No, it's not ugly. It's cool ship, cool miniature ship. 1, 2, 3. What is that? Yeah, I don't know what this is, so I'm going to say this frame is ugly. But overall, I think this is a very pretty movie, and it feels very grounded in reality. It feels very realistic in a lot of these situations, and that's partly due to the fact that Christopher Nolan shoots a lot of practical things. He goes through extreme lengths to make model spaceships and go to locations and not shoot in front of green screens. But I think another thing that makes this movie feel grounded is the lighting choices. They are kind of using more just simplistic lighting setups. Even if these lighting setups are kind of expensive, they're not trying to do too much with it. You know what I mean? So let me know in the comments what you want me to do next, and like and subscribe. Goodbye.